Hype Network presents.
Probably for me, maybe not maturing too early on in life because I feel that, I mean, it's a comment that I've heard from a few acquaintances throughout as well, where they assume that I was a lot older than my age. So, in hindsight, like I've had to understand certain things that I should be understanding at a more mature age or more advanced level, I guess. But then I learn them early and I've had to understand like its significance or its meaning much earlier than I actually would have wanted to.
Catch the Pizarra Tales weekly as we tackle issues about education and share experiences about teaching. Hosted by Jayma Australia, available on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of Reflection. And my guest today is an honorary guest. This episode is my official 100th episode in total. So it's a huge honor to have my guest be a part of this experience and be a part of this conversation. And you're going to learn a lot in this conversation, guys. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my guest, my sister, Jayma Doraiswamy. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, doing
So,
great.
so before we get into the meat and bones of this conversation, uh, I gotta ask, for context, because I know you in high school already. For my listeners, to give context, uh, who were you if you and if you were classmates, if you were my classmate in high school? Because you and I were from different levels. We're an introverted, sporty. Just to give context to my listeners.
Who will I be if we were on the same like grade level? That's a question, right?
Yeah.
Probably the snobbish one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not any different from what I am now, but yeah, definitely the snobbish one who'd sit in the corner, not really interact with people.
Yeah. I've I gotta admit, I have looking back, listening to all my episodes, my previous episodes. There's a recurring theme of introverted characters that I've met, and it's really interesting how people have changed over the period of time, and I find that interesting. I gotta add, uh, of course, being snob makes you an introverted kind of person. Am I right?
Yeah,
And you're still
I
an
mean,
introverted. Yeah, that's one thing I know about you. You're still an introverted person.
I guess I'm selective that way. Like if I'm comfortable around people, regardless of whether I've known them for years or if I've known them for 5 minutes, if I have that comfort level, then
Uh,
it's all filters down.
interesting, interesting,
Oh,
interesting. So, to to make it things interesting, I noticed that getting you on this episode was very hard because knowing that you mentioned that you're an introverted. Was there any form of change that you had to go through in order to associate yourself with people?
I mean, in hindsight, yeah, you do have to kind of mask who you are initially because
Mm,
for you to blend in,
yeah.
but then that's also on your part, you're already judging the people who you're around. But in hindsight, like you get to realize like who's who in the group because I would say that I'm also a very observant person. The
Mm,
people's first impression of me is generally very quiet and who wouldn't really like talk that much. But then I observe everyone and I notice like how conversations go with them, or how open they are to actually accepting someone else's opinion. But
Hmm.
it doesn't help that, uh, sorry for lack of better words, but I have a resting bitch face generally, like normally. So I just perpetually angry even though I'm not, and even if there's literally nothing running in my head.
Interesting.
So yeah, I guess for an introverted person, I get to learn how I can change
Hmm.
momentarily until actually like showing my. So yeah, it's just about comfort level.
Interesting. Interesting. This nice opening and deep understanding of how a mind of an introvert person is. It's nice. It's a nice opening, and I love the topic because I'm for me from my end, for those who know me and those who are listening, I'm an extrovert, not an extrovert. So I do a lot of things with extra saying. And, yeah, uh, sometimes I get a little bit. Uh, During my high school times, it was much more different. But this is, yeah, this is an interesting conversation. Transitioning into uh, introversion. Uh, I wanted to talk about uh, philosophy. Uh, I wanna squeeze the best out of you because I've never had this heart to heart conversation about you. As an introvert, were when when you were trying to when you were trying to adjust to daily life, what
Mm-hmm.
was what is the philosophy that you stood by, or is there a quotation that you stood by yourself that you have to get through a day? Because it's an interesting it's an interesting topic to talk about introversion, especially with you. Is that coming back to my question? Is that do you have an interest a philosophy that you live by in order to get you through the day?
Not really, because as years went by, I went from being very shy and very like timid to actually, because of my job now also, because I also am an event manager, so it's inevitable that I talk to clients.
Mm,
So initially, I had like a fear of picking up the phone and just like reaching out to a certain client, or like even just coordinating on a phone, like in the early years of like my career.
mm,
But then once I got used to it, then it made me more confident in
mm,
talking to people. I'm still not 100 on that, but then it's a lot better than where I started, I guess. So
mm.
in that sense, I never really had philosophy as such. It's just like I just went with the flow. Whether if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I'm also fine with that. But yeah, I guess that's where I stood.
Interesting. Interesting quotation there. If it works, it works. It's the most simplified. That's the most simplified quotation. If it works, it works. And
Yeah,
that's going to be a
uh,
quotation. That's going to be a quotation for saying, because some people sometimes people like me overcomplicate quotations with words and different associations just to make things a little bit more spicy. Well, that's my character. I like to make things spicy, but I'm gonna quote you on that. If it works, it works. I know it's a quotation. I know it's a quotation by someone else, but it doesn't get simplified in that way. Like I said, you're very one thing that I know about you, very simplified. Uh, I One thing that I know about you when we were in school was, um, over the period of time, I observed that you were when you and I were growing up, you had
mhm.
this different this adaptability, and especially when it comes to leadership and stuff like that. You really took the reins, even though it wasn't. Um, then how did it feel to be in that space when you became a prefect, and then when it came to competition, you were competitive? And what was running through your head as an introverted kind of person?
I just wanted to get it over with, honestly. I never really thought about it that much because at the end of the day, the sooner I get it done, the sooner I can move on to the next thing. And honestly, I feel like, I mean, this is just from me, like me being in the leadership role at whichever grade I was in. It was only by fluke, to be honest. Like, I never really took myself that seriously. Although
Mm.
I admit I like the authority because
Who
I do get
doesn't? Who doesn't?
but yeah, I guess I just enjoyed the fact that nobody can really like mess with me.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I just really love this conversation because I've never had the heart to heart conversation about introvertedness and understanding introvertedness, and I've never had a conversation with anyone about being introverted and dissecting a person's personality and person's character. It's speaking of reflection. Do you have a story now that we're in the topic of reflection and looking back at life? Do you have a story in your life that you look back to and it's changed your life, that this without this event, uh, life for me would have never happened? Do you have any of the, do you have a story like that?
I mean, there are a lot of things that have happened growing up. Like a lot of things, good and bad, I guess, shaped me as a person, regardless of whether, yeah, honestly, like even if it was good or bad, it helped shape me and like changed my perspective on certain things. But I
Mm,
don't think there's just that one thing instant where I can attest me being the way that I am.
mm,
But I guess it's just like combination of what how things were when I was growing up and how I've had to like adjust and adapt and just again go with the flow.
mm,
So it's never again it's not just one thing. It's a lot of things combined together, and I'm glad that I experienced the good, the bad, the ugly,
mm,
because I will not be the kind of person that I am today. I would think that I'm a compassionate person,
mm,
although not everyone gets to see that side, because again, I'm not that easy to open up to people always. Although sometimes I do get extra friendly and extra chatty when under the influence of alcohol, but that's a very different situation. So yeah, it's very dependent on that.
yeah. I wanna
Yeah.
I want to turn to storytelling a little bit now, because the story is the way we took the story is from introversion. We dug deep into the introversion, and then we came to reflection. I want to ask an interesting question that may change the dynamic of this conversation. Connecting
Okay.
to the previous question, if there was a timeline within your lifespan that you would have changed, that would have changed your life, where would it be and why?
I guess not really having. I don't know how to answer. That's a very interesting question. I haven't really thought about it. But probably for me, maybe not maturing too
Hmm.
early on in life, because I feel that, I mean, it's a comment that I've heard from a few acquaintances throughout as well, where they assume that I was a lot older than my age.
Hmm.
So, in hindsight, like I've had to understand certain things that I should be understanding at a more mature age or more advanced level, I guess.
Hmm.
But then I've learned them early and I've had to understand like its significance or its meaning much earlier than I actually would have wanted to. But
Interesting.
again, I I wouldn't really change that for anything because it may be who I am now.
that would create a different timeline of you being childish all the time. That is a different image in my head.
I mean, yeah, not to say that I'm still not childish. I do have my moments, but it's fun, especially if it's to annoy our parents. That's damn fun. I would
Yeah,
talk to it.
yeah. Shout out to our parents who are listening, by the way. We've come so far in this journey. I gotta admit that I'm just gonna do a small little rant. I hope you don't mind. This journey of my podcast is uh, one hell of a journey. I never expected to reach even 100, and to have you, it's it feels different, and it feels prouding because I don't know, this podcast changed my life and still continues to change my life. Sometimes it stresses me out. It's like a baby, but it's it's it is what it is. I don't know what to say to that. It is what it is, and I want to say thank you for accepting my call because it's it's an incredible journey.
For sure.
I hope I can hit 200 and still keep going. So we what a journey we had. This is an interesting journey. Looking back at the conversation, the storytelling is much different than I expected in my head. And
What do you mean?
sorry,
What do you mean by that?
uh, I know. I remember telling you this that before we had this conversation, before we even had the recording, you wanted to pre-plan
Mm-hmm.
everything and saying, and with that thing in my head, I was expecting a different version, a more saying. Now, it feels different because in my head I thought you were still going to the strict plan, but at least you managed to embrace the and adapt to my weird style of doing things. And yeah, uh, because usually many people I, I've met many people who dislike my style of questioning, and didn't really continue the conversation. So
Mm-hmm. I
it's
remember.
yeah. So yeah, this is an interesting journey. I'm not even putting any monitor music on my ear. That's why I'm full focused on you. It's really an interesting conversation.
That's good. Decent on boring.
There's a lot of stuff that I would love to talk about life, but I want to take away the glitz and glamour, and I want to get into the bottom of motivation because that's my show. It's all about motivation. Um, is there anything that you would love to tell our listeners in terms of motivation as an introvert? How a mature introvert you mentioned that you would love to share?
I mean, it sounds weird now that you say it back to me, but then I guess the motivation that I can think of is shit happens. It's life. It's part and parcel of life. You never really plan anything, and somehow, somewhere along the line, things change, the situations change, and you just have to look at the right side of it, although realistically, just to make yourself feel better at the moment, I guess.
Hmm.
But me personally, what's worked is even though I've gone through certain situations in my life where I've questioned whether I just want to move on
Hmm.
or if I really want to dwell on a certain incident that has affected me negatively.
Hmm.
Not dwelling really helped me move on and process things
Hmm.
and not even want to go back. And for me, it's become like a very distant memory. It might not be the same for everyone. Everyone has a different way of coping, but
Hmm.
as speaking for myself, that's what helped me at least come to terms with certain things that I might not necessarily be too fond of. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
It's interesting. Is this conversation is really really interesting. I have this one question that I had in mind when you were speaking is how to be mature, because I'm sure I really want to genuinely I'm asking that question as a selfish question for me. For me, I'm still trying to catch up with what the world has to offer, and it's hard for me to uh, mature up, and I think that's a struggle that I still continue to live by. So I gotta ask you, what is how you mentioned earlier you matured too soon. How what is what does it take to mature, and um, what is the struggles and sacrifices that you have to go through in order to achieve pure maturity, or uh, a part of it, being a matured person?
I mean, I don't think there's ever a secret formula. It's just a matter of you taking a step back and trying to understand a certain situation from another person's perspective.
Hmm.
And I take that back. I wouldn't consider myself as very mature because I do make very immature choices sometimes.
Hmm.
But in that sense, just being very observant of how people interact with other people.
Hmm.
Again, not it's not what you do that actually shapes your brain into like maturing. It's what you've gone through, and at least for me, that's really what helped me grow up and just like accept things for what they are. And that's probably why I kind of gained a more positive acceptance to certain situations, because again, not everything will go your way.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. It's fascinating. I love this conversation already. I'm putting this on my top 15 conversation. I really love this conversation because yeah, it's it's a one on one that I never expected. I mean, I I've always wanted to have this one on one with you. I mean, I wanted to have a one on one with my cousins, with you, bring you all in a podcast and get the best out of you. But I cannot complain. Some people are busy, some people are shy. It's just it takes a lot of guts to especially being part of my show. It's stressful. For those who are listening, by the way, the amount of stress that I'm going through in this creation of this series has heightened. So I gotta admit that yeah, I'm in a much more now. I'm much more relieved knowing that I have my sister here, because uh, this is the first time having that kind of feeling. Usually, when I'm with her, it's a different kind of feeling. It's like I want to protect her at all times. But here, it's just a different environment, different vibe. We're vibrating at a different frequency, and I don't know if my guest, my sister, agrees with me that this what she feels about this conversation is much more different than our usual conversations in at home.
It's definitely different because we never really get a chance to talk. Because again, like you mentioned, busy.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, adulting is intense, but
uh, uh,
and
yeah.
again, I personally also the reason sometimes why I don't really like go like at least in these recent months, the reason why I don't interact with people that often, or to be fair, I don't really call home that often, is
Mm,
because I enjoy being on my own. I like being in my own space, even if it's just sitting and just staring at the wall. I'm very comforted by that feeling. So, as weird as that sounds, like it's something that I've gotten used to, and I'm okay with that. I'm very happy that way. So, even if it's a day, like a long day at work, and I just want to chill alone,
yeah.
I comfort in that more than anything.
Now that you mentioned it, I wanted to share a story. During my college years, I've always been treated as an outcast. From my perspective, of course, I cannot say that on behalf. You mentioned you're comfortable being in your own space. I want to share my
Yeah.
experience because I haven't shared this. This is exclusive, guys. For those who are tuning, this is exclusive. I don't think I've shared this in my previous seasons, but there was like I mentioned, I termed myself as an outcast because I never really had much friends, and the friends that I had, I associated with were more of the use and throw kind of situation. But I still love them. I mean, if they're listening, shout out to them. Um, I gotta admit that the transition, that awkward thing that you mentioned, is something that I had to learn to adapt for 5 years, which is really interesting. Trying to sit alone and being on your own headspace, it's just different. And
Yeah, because you were always very social since we were
yeah,
kids.
yeah,
Everyone literally still knows me as Rajiv's sister, just BT dubs.
yeah. And
Like,
it's just a flashback that I look back at it. I mean, things that I used to do in the later years of college. Especially, there were times that I enjoyed walking from Baguio to La Trinidad, which I told my mother, and I told you. And I know you guys don't have the
yeah,
patience and the ability. Somehow I kind of enjoyed those kind of moments. Now, when the pandemic struck, of course, lockdowns were so strict. Those were the spaces where I managed to get inside my own head and understand things. It's kind of ironic. I wanted to share this, that I look back at those times. There are times that I was walking, and the previous lesson of the previous semester would pop. The answers would pop up in my head only then. It's kind of weird. I don't want to talk about it. It's gonna be a whole topic altogether. But my form of learning somehow comes much more easier there. It's like because
mm,
when I'm walking, somehow I have that sense of the fresh air, the fresh air, and back then there was no face mask, so the fresh air kind of clears my thoughts, uh, and it just makes me complete. I can
mm,
sleep better somehow. I can I don't know, even though I'm tired, my legs are tired, especially after I go to the gym and then go to school and then come back, my legs are sore. I still have the ability. There are many times I don't think I shared this with you. There's also a time where we had a play, and the play was on top of one of the buildings, and then of course uh, I had an 8 p.m. class after 7 p.m. 8 p.m. class. And then once
mm,
I was done with that, of course, in the play, we had to contribute, and I had to carry blankets. I had to carry this for the props and everything, and my bag was heavy. And at that time, it was Pinagbenga, so traffic was crazy. But when after
mm.
the classes were done, I was exhausted, and I'm glad, bless my teacher's heart, that I was actually um, it was more of a relaxation so that I could clear my head. At that moment, I do not know how I managed to get the energy to go from top of the building in UB, and mind you, this was at night, to home. I did not know how I managed to go, because halfway through, I thought I'd just pass out in the street with a heavy bag, and luckily there was no musical instruments, but with a heavy bag with everything, it was just crazy. It was one of those experiences. It was one of those experiences that I don't know. Even I till today, I'm still baffled by it. That how I managed to get home, and yeah, it's just crazy.
I think you just had your goal set to actually get your ass home, to be honest.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
It's just your willpower to get your ass home. That's probably like in your adrenaline rush.
There was no adrenaline rush. I was zip exhausted because we had during the entire day. We I showed up in a benga time. I showed up 7 a.m. if I remember the timeline. I was there 7 a.m. setting up blah blah blah, and then talking to everything. memorizing my lines because I was one of the characters. I was one of the villains of the character, so I had to memorize my line being the character. And then I had to wait, and then I had two shows, mind you, two shows on top of that building. And then right after that event was done, I had a 7 to 8 class, and I was not exempted. I was hoping to be exempted, but there was no exemption, so I had to attend. So it was just one of those experiences that blew me away. I mean, midway, somewhere down the somewhere down the road, I stopped by a sari sari store just to eat chips, just to have a little bit of energy. But then
Mm,
that experience can never be duplicated, and it's just mind blowing for me. So yeah,
that's good.
yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to share, and exclusive, guys. This exclusive piece for you guys. So it looks like Zoom is telling me that we have 4 minutes left. So before we wrap up this conversation, uh, of course, my listeners may or may not want to connect with you via social media, knowing that you're a very introverted person. If you want to share your social media, how would they connect with you on social media?
Um, I guess you can put my username. It's underscore JAYCD. And yeah, it's very simple.
Uh, that's on IG. That's
Yeah,
on
IG.
IG. Okay. Yeah, guys. Thank you, guys, again. I know I've been saying thank you for the for a portion of this conversation. I want to say thank you first to my listeners who've supported my show, and now I want to turn to my guests, and I want to say thank you, not just to my guests, to my family. It's been a long time coming since I've done something uh, that made me feel happy being part of the family. So I want to shout out to family, mom, dad, if you're listening, thank you for the support. And I want to say thank you to my sister, who is my honorary guest for everything, basically.
Having me.
Sorry.
Thank you for having me. It's like,
So yeah, for those who are tuning in, I hope you picked up a lot of interesting uh, pieces in this conversation. And like I said, cheers, folks, and I will see you in the next episode.